$350 million. That's how much merchandise this quarterback has helped move before ever starting a single regular season NFL game. But what started as a simple competition for the Cleveland Browns' starting job has spiraled into something much darker. One viral practice clip, 3 hours. Every single jersey with his name, gone. Across the city, fans lined up, crashed the team's website, and cleared out shelves as if a legend had already been crowned. And next to that empty space, sat an untouched pile of jerseys with a very different name, Gabriel. He wasn't injured, he wasn't benched, he just disappeared commercially, emotionally, and maybe even mentally. Teammates noticed. Cameras caught things fans weren't supposed to see. Sources say what happened next shook the entire locker room. Not just frustration, but a complete emotional collapse from a player many thought was unshakable. And all of it? Triggered not by a play, but by a receipt. This isn't about stats anymore. It's about power, influence. Merch tables are deciding lineups, and the fans are voting with their wallets. You thought quarterback controversies were settled on the field? Not anymore. This one? It's being lived and lost in silence, in locker rooms, in security footage, and in racks of unsold jerseys. It started with one deep throw, a 60-yard bomb in practice from Sanders that dropped straight into his receiver's hands under pressure against the first-team defense. The clip hit Twitter, then Reddit, then national news. Within hours, fans stampeded into the Browns' online store. 3 hours later, there wasn't a single Sanders jersey left in stock. The rush was so intense, the website crashed twice. Customer support lines exploded with frustrated fans unable to check out. By morning, 2 emergent restocks were already wiped clean. A third order was placed that afternoon. The warehouse couldn't keep up. This wasn't just demand, it was a movement. Meanwhile, in a quiet storage room across town, rows of untouched Gabriel jerseys waited like old phones nobody wanted anymore. Same team, same position, but the sales gap told a story no coach would admit publicly. Among staff, whispers started. Gabriel merchandise was gathering dust, not revenue. 93% of his jerseys remained unsold, stacked, sealed, untouched. Then came the breaking point. Multiple sources confirm that Gabriel first learned about the sales report early that morning. A staffer handed him the merchandising numbers. He likely expected nothing explosive, but when he saw that his opponent's gear sold out while his hadn't moved, something inside cracked. The report, according to one witness, left him absolutely stunned. He didn't say much. At first, just stared. Then he erupted. What followed, one teammate said, was the first time they'd ever seen real anger from the normally collected quarterback. There were raised voices, red eyes, raw frustration bleeding through years of carefully maintained professionalism. And the most devastating words came quietly, trembling out of him. It's not even about football anymore, is it? A brutal realization. The jersey racks had spoken louder than the depth chart ever could. And the silence that followed was louder still. Inside the building, coaches went about their business. Players acted like nothing happened, but everyone knew something irreversible had just shifted. In professional sports, you expect competition to be physical, mental, even. But this was commercial warfare. One player saw himself erased from fan consciousness in real time, while the other was elevated to franchise savior status by nothing more than a practice clip and a hashtag. It wasn't just about performance. It wasn't even just about popularity. It was proof in cold, brutal sales figures that Cleveland fans had already made their choice. And for Gabriel, the worst part wasn't just that Sanders sold more jerseys. It was realizing that people didn't even care enough to consider his. Up until that morning, Dillon Gabriel was known for one thing: control. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, and while his name didn't trend on social media, coaches praised his consistency. He was the classic film room guy, prepared, even-tempered, unshakable under pressure. But that image shattered the moment the team's merchandising coordinator slid the report across the table. That piece of paper didn't just show numbers. It exposed something deeper, something personal. Gabriel saw the entire shelf of Sanders jerseys sold out before noon. He saw multiple restocks already processed. Social media screenshots showed fans wearing them at open practice the night before. Local stores couldn't keep them on the racks. His name? Buried under the clearance tab. And that word hit harder than any edge rusher ever could. According to sources inside the building, Gabriel's hands were shaking when he read the reports, eyes wide, jaw clenched. Then came a verbal explosion so intense it stopped conversations halfway across the locker room. One staffer described it as like a dam bursting. "This is a damn popularity contest now." His voice cracked, not with volume, but with wear, like the sentence had been sitting in his chest for weeks. And now, the proof was undeniable. Teammates were caught completely off guard. Gabriel had always been calm, almost stoic. He never flinched after interceptions, never yelled at receivers, never snapped at coaches. But now, they saw something raw, something human. An offensive lineman later told a friend, "I've never seen him like that. He looked like he was about to break something or himself." Because this wasn't about football anymore. Not to Gabriel. It was about relevance, about identity, about standing in the building you work in, and realizing fans don't want you. Realizing your best isn't being ignored, it's being outshined by someone who hasn't even played a quarter in the NFL yet. And the moment hit harder when he looked around and noticed not a single teammate interrupted him. No one stepped in to calm him down. Not one voice told him, "You'll be all right." They just listened, silently, because deep down, they understood what he was feeling. They just weren't sure they wanted to be on his side. It wasn't just frustration, it was fear. The kind of fear that seeps in when you realize you might be losing a competition you didn't even know was happening. Sales, social media, highlights, branding. Gabriel was outgunned on every front, and the numbers had just handed him the verdict. It didn't matter how accurate his passes were in drills. It didn't matter how well he memorized the playbook. The fans were behind Sanders. And worse, the team might follow them next. Gabriel's outburst might have surprised the locker room. But the numbers? They didn't just validate it, they screamed it. Over 47,000 in Sanders jersey sales in a 3-hour window. That's not a fan base catching on. That's a fan base declaring allegiance. The team's online store didn't just get busy, it crashed. Twice. IT had to reroute traffic through secondary systems. Fans were flooding servers, desperate to grab a jersey as if they were front-row seats to the future. Customer support lines lit up with angry callers who never got through checkout. People were furious because they couldn't buy fast enough. And it wasn't just online. Local stores reported full sellouts before sunset. Parents were calling around Northeast Ohio trying to find just one more, youth size 12. Unsatisfied fans were spotted at practice holding handmade Sanders signs instead of jerseys because the shelves were already bare. The franchise scrambled. By midnight, a second emergency restock had already arrived and was gone by morning. A third restock was being ordered by 10 a.m. By noon the next day, the merchandise manager was talking about a fourth. This wasn't rookie momentum. This was superstar velocity. The kind of sales spike teams pray for. The type they expect from franchise players after playoff wins, not practice throws. Now, contrast that with Gabriel. #4 jerseys, his line barely budged. Internal reports stated a brutal statistic. 93% of his allocated stock was still sitting untouched, even after preseason sales discounts. Almost nothing had moved. The merchandising team, without official approval, started considering clearance options. One exec suggested bundling Gabriel's gear with water bottles and hats just to get it off shelves. Another source said the team store manager privately floated the idea of discontinuing his jersey altogether before the season even started. Think about that. Third-round draft pick, competing for a starting NFL position. And yet, the fan base is basically saying, no thanks. It's more than disrespect, it's rejection coded in barcodes. And everyone inside the facility knows what this means. Because jersey sales don't just reflect fandom, they predict power. They draw corporate sponsorships. They attract national attention. They affect ad revenue and media airtime. They shape how franchises think about direction. Fan investment isn't just passion anymore, it's currency. And Sanders just turned into a bank. Every sold jersey ratchets up his leverage. Every unsold Gabriel T shrinks his future. In a league where decisions are rationed by dollars, even the head coaches can't afford to ignore this math. Because as much as they want to focus on playbooks and progressions, that locker room is surrounded by receipts now. And receipt don't lie. By now, it wasn't just about sales. It was about symbolism. Every Sanders jersey worn in public became a statement louder than cheers, sharper than criticism. Fans weren't just picking a player. They were choosing sides. Every sold 12 jersey? It was a vote. And each one silently screamed, "We don't want Gabriel." The locker room felt it. Publicly, nobody said a word. But behind the scenes, the tension was creeping into every interaction, a quiet war being fought without a play being called. One Browns employee described it perfectly. Every jersey sold wasn't just merchandise, it was pressure, walking pressure. And then came the viral moment. A simple Tuesday practice drill. Cameras rolling, Sanders in the pocket, pressure collapsing around him. He launches it downfield, a 60-yard strike. Hit the receiver perfectly in stride over defenders who've started on Sundays. The clip hit social media within 20 minutes. Within an hour, it was trending nationwide. ESPN aired it on repeat with voiceovers praising future greatness. Barstool Sports dropped a meme calling it the throw that broke the depth chart. That one moment, it left Gabriel with no response. Literally, he wasn't even on the field. He stood on the sideline, watching it unfold like the rest of us. Except he was watching his job vanish in real time, through a phone screen replayed millions of times. Fans exploded with excitement. Jerseys became even scarcer. Hashtags exploded. And Gabriel? He got promo pricing. The marketing team slashed the price tag on his jersey that afternoon in a last-ditch effort to generate traction. Still, shelves were untouched. That's when the mind games became something more. Sources within team facilities say Gabriel was later seen standing in front of the merchandise wall inside the team store. One side, a whole section cleaned out, all Sanders gear gone. The other, every size and color variant of Gabriel, untouched, fully stocked. A literal wall, dividing two trajectories. According to security footage, Gabriel stood there silently for 17 straight minutes. Just staring, not speaking, motionless, processing it all. One custodial worker swore he saw Gabriel fighting back tears. This wasn't technical feedback. It wasn't a coach criticizing footwork. This was the kind of feedback no athlete trains for economic rejection. Because unlike film sessions or scrimmages, there's no way to game plan against a city that doesn't believe in you. No audible that silences a crowd wearing someone else's number. No route tree that reconnects a disconnected market. The game he trained for, he was still playing it. But the one that mattered most now, he was already losing. And worst of all, everyone could see it, without saying a word. The footage didn't go public, but inside team facilities, it spread quietly. A clip pulled from a corner security camera. A lonely figure standing in front of two merchandise displays. One empty, one full. On the right, an entire section of Sanders jerseys completely cleared out. Even the mannequins wore duplicates, so the shelves didn't look bare. On the left, a full wall of untouched Gabriel gear, stacked, immobile, unwanted. And in between them stood Gabriel, motionless. For 17 uninterrupted minutes, he stood frozen in front of his own name, watching nothing move, watching nothing change. No fans shopping, no team staff restocking, just silence. A member of the janitorial crew who passed through quietly said Gabriel wasn't blinking much, like he was holding back something he refused to let fall. When he finally walked away, he didn't speak to anyone, just grabbed his keys, left the building, and drove off. And the emotional ripple that followed hit the locker room hard. Sources say tension inside the Browns facility reached a boiling point within 48 hours. Not on the field, not between the players, but behind closed doors in the coaches' meetings. Kevin Stefanski, known for controlling chaos, called an emergency session with key staff. The topic wasn't game, film, or coverage packages. It was merchandise. More specifically, the emotional state of one quarterback who seemed to be cracking, and the unstoppable force of momentum surrounding the other. His message to the staff was clear. Merch doesn't decide the depth chart, performance does. But did anyone believe that? Because while Stefanski delivered that speech, emails were already circulating about jersey availability for upcoming preseason events. PR schedules began shifting focus towards Sanders. Sponsorship leads were already requesting interviews not with the starter, with the backup. Internally, every department from e-commerce to ticketing was learning the same thing in real time. Sanders sells. Gabriel doesn't. And that truth was seeping into football decisions. Quietly, subtly, but unmistakably. Players were catching on. Some noticed coordinators spending a little more drill time around Sanders. Others saw how the cameras followed him at open practices. Even jersey placement during promotional content subtly shifted front and center for one, deliberately off to the side for the other. And through it all, Gabriel kept showing up, kept practicing, kept putting in the work. But the spark was gone. He wasn't playing to win the job anymore. He was playing not to disappear. And as one teammate whispered privately, that moment in the team store, that's when we all knew. Something in him broke. Because a missed throw you can fix, a bad week at camp you can bounce back from. But what do you do when the entire city has already moved on? While Gabriel was drowning in silence, Sanders was doing the exact opposite without saying a word. He didn't comment on the jersey sales. He didn't react to the headlines. He didn't post so much as a caption about the chaos unraveling around his competitor. Instead, he showed up to practice the next morning and spent 45 minutes signing autographs. Not just a few token signatures, he went station to station, jersey after jersey. He posed for pictures with fans wearing his 12 cracked jokes with little kids, even FaceTimed with a few fans' family members back home. The moment wasn't branded. It wasn't part of a PR push. There were no cameras staged, but dozens caught it anyway. And that footage went viral again. But here's what made it more powerful. He never once mentioned Gabriel, didn't acknowledge the rumors, didn't feed the narrative. While reporters chased controversy, Sanders stayed tapped into the fans as if none of the noise existed. That silence, that humility, it wasn't insecurity, it was strategy. Sources say Sanders told his inner circle something blunt. Let the brand talk, no need to dunk on him. That wins for me. Because Sanders understood what very few rookies grasp, the real war isn't verbal, it's psychological. And in that regard, he was already playing chess 3 moves ahead. Behind the scenes, his brand team was already coordinating logistics for meet and greets, customizing merch drops, and managing interviews with national outlets. Not one dime of it came from the Browns' front office. It was all independently operated. The Sanders machine had a life of its own, bigger than the franchise that drafted him. Marketing data showed something even more revealing. Sanders jerseys were being ordered across the country: California, Texas, Florida, even overseas. One shipment report showed growing traffic coming from London, Germany, and Canada. And demographically, his fan base skewed younger, more diverse, more digitally native. Social media was flooded with teens and 20-somethings aligning with Sanders, not just because of his arm, but because of what he represented: flash, charisma, energy. Meanwhile, Gabriel's supporters came from a far narrower lane. Local fans, older demographics, traditionalists. The franchise was watching these trends very, very closely, because this wasn't just about football anymore. It was about where Cleveland was headed toward the future, or clinging to the past. And the young quarterback shaking hands in that crowd of kids with homemade signs, he wasn't just playing quarterback, he was becoming the face of that future. And he didn't have to take a single shot at Gabriel to do it. He just kept smiling, signing, and letting the racks of empty space where his jerseys used to be tell the story for him. Loud, clear, and unstoppable. Inside the Browns' front office, the divide was no longer subtle. On one side, the football purists. They studied the tape, charted practices, ranked footwork and field vision. To them, Gabriel still had the edge in technical execution. He took fewer risks, processed faster, and ran the offense the way it was drawn up. On the other side, the sales reports. Executives didn't care about 10-yard outs. They cared about the number of Sanders jerseys flying off shelves, and the spreadsheets were getting louder by the week. One high-ranking official was overheard saying, "We're not selling jerseys, we're trying to win games." To which another reportedly fired back, "Without selling jerseys, we won't exist to win games." That wasn't drama. That was reality. Because when you looked at the raw numbers, Sanders was already making the team money that veterans never did. Local retailers said his jersey outsold every other Browns player combined. Restaurants lined their walls with his gear, hoping to attract younger customers. Radio stations were already spinning songs that referenced him like he was a local legend. And the season hadn't even started. Think about what that does to a franchise desperately trying to remain relevant in a national spotlight. You've got half the ownership group holding meetings about preseason merch revenue, while the coaching staff is in film rooms fighting for a quarterback whose name no one's buying. Internally, it created turbulence at every level. PR was stuck in the middle. Marketing couldn't ignore the numbers, but football leadership refused to treat Sanders' buzz as anything more than a distraction. The building wasn't aligned. Staffers began choosing sides without even realizing it. Assistants started casually wearing Sanders gear around the facility. Trainers ordered extra 12 hoodies. Even players began tallying which teammates were rocking which jersey behind closed doors. It was no longer just a quarterback competition, it was a brand war. And whether anyone wanted to admit it or not, Sanders was winning by a landslide. Meanwhile, Gabriel couldn't catch a break. Every new headline about Sanders came at his expense. Every interview request skipped over him entirely. Even internally, execs began questioning whether it made sense to put so many resources behind a player who couldn't move product even if he read defenses correctly. Because to ownership, that empty fan shelf was more damaging than a bad throw. The Browns were no longer just managing a depth chart. They were managing an identity crisis. And the scariest part? No matter how well Gabriel practiced, no matter how many smart plays he made, the public had already made its decision. And the franchise was starting to listen. At this point, Sanders wasn't just getting attention, he was commanding it. Every practice he walked into, a crowd gathered. Not just fans, but press, bloggers, influencers. Even Browns beat reporters started setting up their tripods facing one direction only, wherever Sanders stood. He didn't have the starting job, nobody said he was Cubone, but that didn't matter anymore. To the outside world, he already was. Autograph seekers lined up at the gates long before practice started. Kids wore his number, adults brought homemade signs, and when he stepped onto the field, the energy shifted, even veterans felt it. Some players even joked that cameras followed Sanders before they followed the head coach. And they weren't wrong. Behind the scenes, a full-blown content strategy had silently formed. A documentary crew independent from the Browns was following Sanders' journey. Not some behind-the-scenes filler for social media, an actual production, real footage, professional editing, just waiting for the perfect storyline to unfold. And that storyline was practically writing itself. Gabriel, meanwhile, drifted further into the background. One brutal moment summed it up. After a midweek practice, hundreds of fans waited outside with Sharpies and footballs. Sanders stopped for every single one. Gabriel walked by them, same exit, same path, and not a single head turned. No autograph requests, no pictures, no greetings. Literally nothing. Witnesses said Gabriel paused for a second, just looked around, watching strangers pass over him like he was invisible, and then walked to his car alone. By that evening, sources close to the quarterback confirmed it. Gabriel deactivated his social media accounts. The weekly comparison was too much. Every scroll, every post, every story reinforced the new reality. Sanders wasn't just popular, he had become a brand, a movement, a narrative fans were rallying behind. And those numbers just kept climbing. Sanders shattered 2 million followers across platforms before playing a single real snap. Engagement rates rivaled seasoned players with Pro Bowl appearances, and endorsement deals already lined up. National commercial campaigns filmed and shelved, waiting for the right moment to press play. It was machinery, strategic, calculated, and fully operational. And it didn't require the Browns' approval. That's what scared the front office the most. Sanders didn't need their platform. He was building his own. One staff member said it plainly. He's not just in the system, he's outside of it, impacting it from the top down. And no one, not Gabriel, not the coaches, not even marketing, could control the snowball that had started rolling straight through the heart of Cleveland. The Sanders wave wasn't coming. It was already here. At first, it felt like hype. Then it became headlines. Now, it's a cultural shift. This wasn't just about quarterback competition anymore, it was about identity. Cleveland hadn't chosen a player, it had chosen a storyline, a generational pivot, a new face for a new era. One that wasn't just about football, but about who the team represented in 2025 and beyond. Local businesses that had never sold Browns merch were now selling out of Sanders gear faster than they could restock. Restaurants swapped out autographed helmets of past legends for 12 jerseys in every booth. A local radio station even dropped an unofficial anthem, a Cleveland rap group using Sanders' name in the chorus. And the craziest part? None of this was coordinated by the franchise. The city did it on its own. From billboard graffiti to Reddit threads, fans took control of the narrative with their wallets, their clicks, and their creativity. They weren't waiting for a press conference. They crowned Sanders on their own time. And inside team headquarters? That panic started setting in. Marketing managers began preparing full reports that read more like investor slides than game day rundowns. One such report, according to sources, estimated that if trends continued, Sanders alone would generate more revenue than the rest of the roster combined by mid-season. Let that sink in. One player more profitable than the entire team. The Browns were no longer a football-first franchise, not by choice, but by reality. Fan demand, brand momentum, and cultural endorsement had split the infrastructure in half. Coaches still talked about execution, reps, playbooks, but upstairs, they were staring at merchandise spreadsheets with panic in their eyes. And for Gabriel? That meant every unsold jersey on that clearance rack wasn't just a statistic, it was a foreshadowing. His brand was fading, and fast. Sources say his agent began scrambling behind the scenes, attempting to craft a redemption arc media campaign focused on work ethic, perseverance, technical mastery. But the marketplace was deaf. The truth was brutal. You can't PR your way into charisma. You either have it or you don't. And Sanders was dripping in it. Even worse for Gabriel, he wasn't just losing the fans, he was losing relevance. He'd become the symbol of an outdated version of the game, safe, quiet, predictable. But Sanders represented something newer, braver, louder, more connected to where the league and the culture were already going. So the franchise had a choice. Start the guy who's earned it on the practice field? Or start the one who's already won the city? Either way, it was about to get messy. Because one of those choices made football sense, and the other kept the lights on.